Our voice of God is back with Senator Santorum. So I'll be introducing the next speaker. Dr. Gary Wolfram, hometown here from Michigan. He's an economist at Hillsdale College. Great beacon of liberty here right in the state of Michigan. A great asset. Dr. Wolfram has done some studies on the bridge on personal injury protection and auto insurance. And we are about issues, and he's going to talk about a couple of those issues right now. Welcome, Dr. Gary Wolfram.
Wow, it's great to see such a great crowd out here. I know, my students often ask me, gee, how are things going? Like, can we really win? And I said, well, what you really got to do is you got to win the battle of ideas. I mean, that's what it's really all about. It's not about personalities. It's not about anything really other than winning that battle of ideas. And that's just a great sign today to see this huge crowd that are engaged in the battle of ideas. As one of the earlier speakers said, you have to get off the couch, you have to get out of the pews, and you have to get out there and work for this. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about, as Scott mentioned, two issues. One is this government bridge. Now, it's interesting that I testified in the Senate against a government bridge in 2005. And at the time, one of the senators at the time, Burt Leland, he said, well, Gary, I'm really interested in what you said. It was really nice, but I have a feeling you're being paid by one of the people that are engaged in the bridge idea. And I said, Burt, if I came in here and testified and told you I was in favor of a government bridge, you'd fall out of your chair, right? So we need to know why in the world we would need a government bridge to compete against a private bridge which already exists. Let's look at the Ambassador Bridge. Let's look at some of the numbers here, because I'm an economist, so I tend to be drawn to these things. Ambassador Bridge traffic, 12.44 million in 1999, 6.67 million in 2011. Detroit-Windsor Tunnel, 9.61 million vehicles in 1999, 3.46 million in 2011. The Blue Water Bridge, which the government twinned in 1998, peaked in traffic in 2000, 5.98 million, now at 4.71 million in 2011. Now, how many in here have ever run a business? Okay, now, if I gave you those numbers, would you say, oh my gosh, what we need to do is double the capacity? Right? I mean, it's not rocket science here. Like, somehow we're going to get all this new traffic. Now, even if we were going to get all this new traffic, where's it going to come from? The 2008 environmental study that was done showed that much of the traffic for this new bridge would come from the existing crossings. So why in the world would I try and drive a private company out of business, to drive out into nothingness the Detroit-Windsor Tunnel, which is owned by Detroit and Windsor, and to eliminate the traffic off the Blue Water Bridge, which we just spent all these millions of dollars to twin, and then we find out what's the delay on the Blue Water. You could make that thing 600 lanes wide. The delay is the customs. If you've ever driven across there, you know that. In addition, you can go on the Ambassador Bridge's website and look in real time what the delay is. There's not a delay. In fact, if you look at the numbers will show you that delays are shorter than they were. In fact, Ford Motor Company, when Ford Motor Company testified in the Senate, I testified in the Senate a little bit ago about, just this seems like Groundhog Day or something, where I have to come in and testify against a government bridge every 6 years. What did they say? They said the delay is on the Windsor side because of the traffic lights. Well, if you read Toll Roads News, which is an excellent place to seek out some information, if you read Toll Roads News, they pointed out that there's a railway right-of-way that the Canadians, for $500 million, could complete along this right-of-way and bypass all this delay and connect into the Ambassador Bridge. Instead, They want to spend $4 billion in taxpayer, Michigan taxpayer, rest of the U.S. government taxpayer, Canadian taxpayer money. Why, as an economist, why would I ever spend $4 billion to build something new when for $500 million we can have a fix of the problem? In addition, you have the private company, a Michigan-based private company, saying that they want to build a second bridge. Now you might say, well, if there's not this traffic argument, why do they want to build a bridge? Because they've got an old bridge, and a lot of you who've run businesses know that oftentimes it's cheaper to build a new one rather than to try to keep refurbishing the old one. So the private company has a reason to twin the span. You'll have 6 lanes instead of 4. And why not let the we got a company saying, I want to do it myself. And we're saying, oh no, we don't want you to do that. We want to engage in some sort of cockamamie government scheme to try to build another bridge. That makes absolutely no sense. But yet, it's oftentimes that government doesn't make any sense. So what should we do? We should make it so that our Michigan-based company can go ahead and complete the second span, and if there is this magic increase in traffic, we should allow the same thing to happen that happened in 1921 when we went about to build the Ambassador Bridge. What happened was the government of Canada and the government of the United States got together and said, hey, we'll set up a franchise and a private company can build this bridge. If we know, if there was demand for another bridge, a private company would build it. So if it looks like there might be another need, why don't we just say, okay, let's do the same thing. We'll set out a franchise, and any private company that wants to bid for this thing, and they'll own the bridge. Don't give me this that it's a private-public partnership where the government's going to own it and the private sector is going to run it. Whoever owns it has the incentives to do things. If the government owns it, you know what's going to happen? The price is going to be set how? By the government. Now you're told that the taxpayers won't be at risk for this thing, right? And if you look at the legislation, it certainly looks like that. It says that there's this private authority, and it's not state money at risk. But guess what? Look at the legislation that created the Mackinac Bridge. Almost the exact same language, right? This wasn't going to be government money involved, etc. And what happened? The very next year, $417,000 was allocated for our operating expenses. A total of $12 million was in operating expenses that's never been paid back. Then they've done another $62 million to pay principal and interest. Why? Because they're not going to let the thing go down, are they? They're not going to risk $22 billion in other state authority debt to say, oh my gosh, this thing's going to go down. We've already done this before. All you need to put taxpayer money at risk is 56 votes in the House and 20 in the Senate, and the governor signs it. If this were a constitutional provision that said, okay, money's not at risk, then I might believe you. But I've already seen it happen with the Mackinac Bridge. You know the tolls aren't going to pay for this thing, and eventually the Michigan taxpayers are going to pay for it. So the answer to this thing is, let's just get rid of this whole government idea. Let's have the private sector build it if they want to build it. If the market's there, it'll develop. Now let me just spend a couple minutes on this unlimited personal injury protection. Now, I tell my students, if you're going to take somebody out to dinner, when do you tell them you're picking up the check? Anybody know? After they've ordered, right? After they've ordered. You don't want to tell, imagine what you did is you not only told your friend you were picking up the check, but you told the restaurant you were picking up the check. The waiter would be there with a $1,000 bottle of wine, right? If what you do is you have unlimited personal injury protection, what are you going to get? You're going to get super expensive ways of treating people. Hugely expensive ways. And why is that? Because the market is going to produce what you give them incentives to produce. It's going to produce really expensive ways of dealing with injury. Michigan has one of the highest costs of insurance in the country. And it's not just for you, but if Jill's Flower Shop is using a car to deliver flowers, it affects them. It affects Myers. It affects anybody that's moving goods and services around. And so what we need to do is to think about this. If you just look at the numbers, no fault. To have an MRI for your neck under no fault in Detroit area costs $3,258. The exact same procedure on a Medicare costs $483. If you look at surgery for a shoulder, $2,806 under no fault, $730 under Medicare. A CT scan for the neck, $1,820 under no fault, $260 for Medicare. You get the idea. The issue is, what do you do with people who have an injury that's severe and they don't have the money to take care of it? Well, why is that confined to auto insurance? If I were to be fixing my roof and fell off a ladder and had a severe brain injury, what are we going to do? Say, oh, that doesn't count. If you'd had a motorcycle accident, we'll take care of it. It makes absolutely no sense to say, here's people that have real problems. The way we're going to deal with it is to tax everybody that's got an automobile. Let's think about how we're going to deal with poor people who have trauma. Let's deal with that. And let's not try to do it through the insurance of our automobiles. It makes no one could price. If you think about this, how in the world could you price a premium? Then they said, well, how much coverage do you want? Oh, on unlimited coverage. It can't be priced. And so what do you end up with? The Michigan Catastrophic Claims Association, you have all sorts of problems. Let's just say we want to deal with people who have traumatic injury, and we're going to deal with it on a general level, and we're not going to try to deal with it through the insurance. It's costing us a fortune. Let's just go ahead and let the market work. And with that, I'd like to invite you all to send your children and grandchildren to Hillsdale College. And I'll turn it back over to Scott. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Wolfram.